And we're live. Gotha notes. Hope everyone is doing pretty good today. Yeah, so welcome to lesson 5. We've officially been doing this for longer than a month now, and I feel like it's going pretty well. For those of you that didn't catch us last week, which I believe Seth, it's mainly you I'm talking to. I hope you watched last week's video, or you have done some study of the Younger Futhark runes before, because I'm going to go headlong into finishing up what we did last night. I'm not sure this is going to make our full hour tonight, because I don't know how much time I can spend on a handful of runes and doing some examples, but we'll see how it goes. So, Nummer dags, the number of the day, is thro. Throw, sorry. Which is 3. Which, if you've been keeping up and along, I'm trying to go in order. So, I'll give us a quick rundown of all of the runes we did last week. See if I can do this quickly. And I'm going to separate them by family, just so they're a little bit easier to keep track of. So, here's what we've got so far. These are the long branch forms of the runes. So, in order, top to bottom, left to right, we have Fe, Ur, Thurs, As, Reith, Kaun, Hagl, Nalvar, Isa, and here at the bottom, Ear. And we'll do the short branch versions as well, just so we can see them again. And again, the primary difference between the long branch and the short branch is simply what you're inscribing on. So the long branch that I just showed you is more common in works of stone and metal, and the short branch, or the short twig, of the exact same set of letters, so Fe, Ur, Thurs, As, Reith, Kaun, Hagl, Naldor, Isa, and Ir. These would have been more for doing written inscriptions on paper. They're a little bit more common in the Denmark/continental Scandinavia, but that's not a hard delineation. You'll see a mix of them on different stones and in different inscriptions. So yeah. Are there any questions from last week's before we dive in to covering the new ones? All right. So I'm going to go in the same format as I did the other day, as far as what's going where. Let's see how this goes. So you'll remember last week we had as or ans, depending on where you're from. And I talked about how it stands for an A with a nasal following it, so an N or an M. Or in some cases, like the word asir, where an N used to follow an A. Well, that leaves us with what do you put for an A that doesn't have this this nasalized marker. And the answer is air. So again, this is the long branch form and the short twig form. The name air means, where did I lost my name meaning. I'll have to look that one back up because I don't remember that one. This is what happens when you're doing things live. When you're transcribing it, it is simply written down as a classic A. Nothing fancy, no hook beneath it or anything like that. And when it's realized, when you do the actual breakdown of what the word could be, it's either an A or an ash. So again, air. Here, this is going to bother me, so let me look this up real quick. So I do this on the right. So let's see. Do we have a good... A good way to realize it is, or to see how it would be written, would be in a word we use pretty often. So I'll put this over here on the side real quick. And I'll go ahead and do the transcription for it. Alright. So here you can see it in its long branch form on the end of this runic inscription, which is Hagel, Isa, Loker, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we will tonight. Sol, again, we'll cover that one tonight. And then Air. So you would transcribe this as H-I-L-S-A. And it's a word we use a lot. It's Helsa. All right, and air means plenty. That's right. So again, so you can see it one more time. Air, it's a long A-R, means plenty. And there's the long branch and the short branch. This one could be very easily confused with Nalver. But you can see the strokes go in a different direction. It's a little bit more apparent in the short form, but not much. So you can see the confusion could very easily happen there and here as well. So when we go to do transcriptions, or I'm I'm probably going to make another one of those transcription worksheets. Gothen Notvolent. Sorry, I just saw the message. All right, so that's air. Are there any questions on that one and how it's used? All right, seeing nothing right now. One of those ones that we just saw is coming up now, and it's a really simple one. And unfortunately, it's one that we've all seen a handful of times, I'm sure. So this is the rune Sol. Its short form is just a line to a little dash to the top, and this is where you'll really see the difference between Sol and Ir or Yir. So you can see that Sol is a dash up at the top, and Ir, that's transcribed as that capital R, is a dash to the bottom. Sol, as you may have guessed, means sun. So direct cognate with the Latin solar, or anything along those lines. It's simply transcribed as an S, and it's realized usually as an S. Z's are very, very rare in Old Norse. You might find them occasionally in borrowed words, but for the most part, it's always realized as an S. All right. All right. Sorry about that. I do have to say that the last remaining ones we have are pretty straightforward ones. I got all the complicated ones out of the way last week, hoping that I could power through and get done. But I'm trying not to power through this time as quickly because I don't have anything planned after we get done with these. So if y'all have suggestions or questions about what to talk about after we finish up these next 4 runes, throw them at me in the chat and I will do my best to cover them. Or if you've got any questions from any of the previous videos or lessons or just off the wall questions, I'm here, I'm live, so throw them at me. So this next one is pretty straightforward as well, like I said. So the long branch and the short branch, and this rune's name is Tyr. There's no good translation for the word Tyr. You can, but it's one you say at least once a week, most likely. It is related to the Anglo-Saxon Tyr, which, and I'm sure all of you know this by now, is tied into our day of the week, Tuesday. So again, Old Norse, Anglo-Saxon, modern English use. I won't get into too much of the mythology when it comes to Tyr, though it is interesting to note that one of the names that Tyr is tied to that a lot of people find interesting is Zeus. Tyr may or may not have originally been the all-powerful sky god that Zeus retains. Sorry, side note, tangent. So the rune Tyr is transcribed as a T and is realized as both a T and a D. If you remember, I talked about the reason for this when we were talking about Calm, but it's that voiced versus unvoiced letter, the whether or not you actually vibrate your vocal cords when you say it. All right, so are there any questions about Tyr? Like I said, these last ones are pretty straightforward. All right. And just a heads up, my daughter is actually still awake. So if you hear her in the background, you shouldn't hear over me. Oh, did that one. So our next letter is Bjarkan or Bjarkan. You can see the long form and the short form. And from the long form, you can probably guess what this letter is. It is indeed a B. Bjarkan means birch, like the birch trees that our lovely sons of Loki North probably have, but don't exist down here as far south. And again, the voiced versus unvoiced aspect of this is realized in Bjarkan as well. So it can be realized either as a B or a P. So I'll give you an example real quick. And this is actually one that I showed to Roland the other day, but I'll do it in a slightly different form. So this is the short twig form. Let y'all look at that one for just a second and think about how you would see that as transcribed. All right. Let me make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. So that would be the transcription of that word. And to see it realized is to be honestly confused, because that doesn't look at all like it should say Speardanes. Now you'll notice I used the ESA for that EA combination. That's taking an English word and putting it into runes, rather than taking the Old Norse rune for spear. So that was kind of a liberty taken there, since of the sound that it actually makes, rather than taking the actual letters. All right. So moving on, unless there are any questions about Bjarkon, which if there are, please hit me up. All right. So our next letter is Mother. So here's the long form and the short form. Now the long form is pretty distinguishable, as long as you don't confuse it with the year rune. So I'll show you those two side by side. And the short form is pretty easy to mix up with Hog. So this, to me, the long form's pretty recognizable. I mean, if it's upright, it's a man. If it's flipped over, then it's a U. You can kind of remember that by this looks like a man who's standing up with his arms over his head like he's doing the Y from YMCA. And this looks like a tree with 3 roots. Now with the short branch, it's all about perception. So if the crossbar is up towards the top, it's man. If it's in the middle, it's hail. It's hoggle. So that's a little confusing when it comes to the actual transcription part of it. But to be honest with you, you see the long branch more often than you do the short branch. So there's that. Let me get rid of the confusing ones. So Mother, as you may have guessed, is transcribed as a lowercase m, and it's realized only as an m. So do a pretty straightforward expression of this one using some of our new letters and some of our old letters as well. And I'll give it to you in both the long and the short. If I can read my own notes. So again, same word, long branch, short branch, or short twig rather. If you look at the transcription of these, you get M, A, thorn, capital R. And as you might guess from that, it's simply Mother. So this is actually a pretty common word that you see in transcriptions. I've been looking over a handful of actual historical transcriptions for y'all as far as what's realized pretty often, what's never actually seen, that kind of thing. That's a word that shows up a lot. So it's not a bad one to know or to be able to recognize, even if you can't remember what the runes mean or what each one individually means. That's one that shows up a lot. So are there any questions on Mother? All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. And again, then this is also our last one. It's a really simple one. So only a long branch form. The short twig is the exact same way. You could, in the short branch transcriptions, potentially confuse this with tier. But again, it's all about stroke direction. So this rune's name is Loiga, which means sea. It is transcribed as an L and realized as an L. And nothing more to it than that. Just for reference, I'll show you how this one is written in long branch and short branch, or in short twig runes, just so you can see it. And you'll notice there's only one inscription written there because somehow this manages to use the runes that don't have short twig variants. But it is one of those ones that you wouldn't really recognize from the transcription. Actually, I lied. I used the wrong R. So there is a difference in the short branch. But I'll just put it in parentheses off to the side. So it would be this R instead, because the R that's on the back of the word there, that R at the end of Loiga, would be, it's a case marker. It's not a true R, as we talked about in the last video. So again, that's the short branch form for the year rune. It's just that dash to the bottom. So transcribed, it's one of those ones that looks funny. You would see it as L-U-K capital R. But remember that rune is really, really versatile and can go through a lot of different, it's pretty much any vowel that you make with a pursed lip, a rounded vowel. So that is all of the runes that we have covered, or that we can cover for the younger Futhark. And I'm going to put them all up again in full order and divided into their different ats. While I'm doing that, are there any questions that we've gotten? Anything you're just not clear on? Now is the time to shoot me questions, or let me know if I missed something that you're really curious about, or Anything along those lines? Nothing? Come on, guys. I'm gonna run out of class today if we don't have questions. So somebody, anybody, ask me things. All right. So this is the long branch forms of the full Futhark alphabet. So starting at the top, working our way to the bottom, left to right, just like you read. It's Fe, Ur, Thurs, As, Reith, Kaun, Hagel, Nalder, Isa, Ar, Sol, Tyr, Bjarkan, Mather, Loiga, and Yer. And then the short branch variants. Do that now. And again, same order, just the short branch, the Danish forms of the letters. A good example of these, written in better hand than I have, would be if you look at the top of our group page. The Old Norse for Reenactors group page. We've got a page, a picture of a page from the Codex Runicus, which was a 11th century, if I'm remembering correctly, vellum that was written entirely in Younger Futhark out of, I think that one came out of Denmark. So you'll actually see the short branch variants written there. So I've got a handful of examples that I've pulled from various runestones and from around different places. So I'm going to put them up, and I will show you some of the little intricacies of seeing and transcribing runes. Oh, come on. So one that shows up in a fair amount, yeah, I'll say a fair amount of stones. I think it's in 6 or 7 stones that I can remember off the top of my head. Is one of those ones that has a weird transcription compared to its actual translation. And it's this one. So you can see Thor, Ur, Wraith, Or, Isa, Kaun, Isa. So when you're doing the transcription on that, you see Thorn, U, R, Uiki. Now, if you hadn't seen the answer there, you may go to the dictionary. You could probably figure out what thur is, just by process of elimination. You know, it could be, there's no S there, so it's probably not thurs, meaning giant. What else can that U be? Well, it can be an O. So this could be Thor. And you'd be right. Note the extra R there, which is it's a nominative case ending. So basically, because it is the subject, Thor takes 2 R's there. But they're not reflected in the runes because there are in almost every case, the doubling of a letter is left out. Now, wiki is a weird transcription. UI is not a vowel combination that occurs very often, or at all, in Old Norse as far as I can remember. So it's probably not a U there. So what else can a U be? Get rid of that. So this is where you go through that weird process of what can an be? What does that rune become? Well, we know it can be a U. We know that it can be an O. It can be an O slash. It can be a Y. It can be a W. And it can be a V. And since we're already at it, doing this, Isa can be an I and an E. We have that twice. And Kaun can be a K or a G. So any combination of the letters in this box could come together to make whatever that last word is. So we're pretty sure it's not wiki. And this is where just honestly knowing vocabulary comes in handy, and knowing some context. So the context for this in most runic inscriptions is it's by itself, it's separated from any other message, and it's often, in several cases, somewhere close to a symbol that often looks like that. Well, knowing Old Norse mythology and religion, that's most likely the hammer of Thor. We already identified that first word as Thor. And seeing that hammer is usually a symbol of blessing. All right, well, is there a word of blessing that can be made out of these words? Or out of this letter combination? And it turns out that there is. The word is Vigi. V-I-G-I. And this literally translates to Thor bless, or Thor hallow. So you can see when doing transcription from runic stones, it can be a really complex matter. Sometimes it can be pretty simple, and sometimes really, really not. So, for instance, there is a certain stone, and I meant to write down where it is. It's in Denmark. It's one of the what are called the Danish mask stones, and this isn't important. but this actually comes from an inscription that is number 66, if I'm remembering correctly, that not only has a runic inscription running up its sides, up and down its sides, but it has pictures on it as well. And one of those pictures is of a mask, very similar to the one that Sons of Loki uses on their emblem. This is not the one that actually this is not that exact mask stone. The inscription that's on that is very long and not easy to break out. So this is a section of another one of these. And it's a long one. But what I really want to call your attention to, and actually often what is seen here since I'm ending it, is like most stone inscriptions across languages, spacing is irrelevant. So if you look at this stone in its modern production, there are big gaps between some of these letters, but those 2 dots that are there represent word breaks. So even if, say, you had a big gap in the stone when you were carving it, you could convey the same word, the same letters of the same word together, and as long as they didn't have those 2 dots in between them, then they would be considered, a continuous word. And often, but not always, in the end of the sentence, you would have a little cross, or in some cases, these double dots would just be single dots, and it would end the sentence in a colon. So what you'll often see is if you're looking at, say, somebody else doing the transcription work for you, which is wise. You will see those colons coming across as well. So your transcription may look like this. So you have Thorn URKIST colon SUN colon ISKIS colon. I won't go through the whole thing. And then again, even though it doesn't look like it should be, see if I can fit this, if I have enough room to fit this back on my board here. Actually, I don't. So I'm going to get rid of the transcription. So even though it doesn't look like this is how it should be written, it actually comes out to be Thorgisel Asgeirsson Bjorn's son. And I won't go into the weird transcription or the translation, but note that there is a different form of son used here compared to son used there. Basically, that just indicates that Thorgisl is Asgir's son, but Asgir is Bjorn's son. All right, I've got one more good example, one that I guess I can say I've been saving the best for last. I don't know about that. I think that might be a lie. But one that I'm sure at least the people that are remaining here want to see. And I'm going to do it in short branch just to show you that both of them will occur, the short branch and the long branch forms. And there's different handwritings for everybody. So, you'll see I'm using a different form of a certain letter this time compared to how I used it last time. And what I was talking about there is this is the rune, and you can see it's a lot more angular this time. Just to be aware that it can show up, a couple different ways. So look at that for a second. Think about what the transcription would be. Carve it in your head for a second, and I'll show you. So you have Doigir, Bur, Kaum, Ar, Sol, Or, Nauther, Ur. And this translates to, I didn't think about it, I actually did this in the singular, should have done it in the plural, would have made more sense. But it translates to son of Loki. So the breakdown of that, and to see it actually written in classical Old Norse. It would be Loka Sonu. Loka is the possessive form of Loki. It's actually the form of Loki in anything but the nominative. So, Sonu is one of the ways to say, there are two different actual ways to say son. Sonu would be the most common in this case, but there is the really less common. You may see it as Loka Sinu as well with an I. So you have the son of Loki. And son declines funny, so I'll have to look up the plural and I will get that to y'all. It may even be on that worksheet that I put out in a few days. So there's that. So yeah, that's all of our, that's all the runes. That's all I've really got for the night. Are there any questions on any of these that we covered tonight or we've covered in the last video, or anything you've seen around about runes that you're just curious about. If so, shoot me a message, and even if it's after the video gets off, of course I'll get back to you, because for some reason I like y'all, or at least I pretend to do. And also, I'm not sure what we need to cover next week. My thought is possibly starting to cover some basic sentences, kind of the go-to script for a reenactor, how to pronounce them, how to respond if someone goes a little off script. That's my thought. That's something that Roland and I had talked about. So let me know what you think about that, or if you have a different idea, you know where to find me. But for now, gott natt, farväl.